Good evening, good morning to everyone. Welcome to our next session on SAP UI5 and Fiori training. In the last episode, we talked about control hierarchy. How can we use control hierarchy to identify the properties, events, methods, and aggregations which are not available directly into the UI5 classes which you are using for your development. We talked about important funda foxes about every control and its properties. For example, if you have a property in a control, you would always find a setter and getter method for the same. If there's an event, you will find attach, detach, and fire event. And then there are a lot of aggregations for which you would probably find methods like set, add, remove aggregation methods, which are part of SAP UI5 control library. We have seen the documentation of every control, which we had used by far in SAP UI5 SDK. So what is the inspiration we have got from SAP UI5 framework? The inspiration which we have got is they are using object-oriented world concepts to make it more extensible, more reusable, and speed up the development process when it comes to adding new class. Because you have already ready-made properties in the parent class, you just have to create inheritance to create new class. Similarly, we can also take this inspiration forward and build our controller in a similar fashion. So right now in our application, we just have one controller, only one controller. But tomorrow, day after tomorrow, I will be adding more and more controllers to our application. In such cases, when you're adding more controllers to your app, how do you make your app more reusable? To achieve that, we also have to use little bit of inheritance concept. And for that, by going on to that, the same meaning, what I'm trying to do here is I will be creating something called a base controller. Okay. I'm creating a base controller, and then I will be having our current view1.controller.js, which is our current JS controller, and I will be inheriting from this base controller. What is the advantage of inheritance in object-oriented world? Anybody? What is the advantage of inheritance in object-oriented world? What is the advantage of inheritance in object-oriented world? What is the advantage? Reusability is the biggest advantage. So this base controller now will inherit from SAP UI Core MVC controller module. This is the standard module. So earlier, your inheritance was directly, your view one inheritance was directly with this gentleman. We are killing this up and introducing another base controller on our own because we want our own common functionality to be part of this base controller class. And then whatever new controllers tomorrow, let's say you will add a view 2 controller. Yeah, you will add a view 2 controller tomorrow. That becomes completely reusable, isn't it? That becomes completely reusable once again for you. It will give you all the benefits of inheritance what you wish to have. So whatever common properties you want, you can put in our base controller, our own base controller. So all these classes which I'm highlighting, they are created by on our own. So they're all created by on our own. This is a standard SAP UI5 module for creating controller. So rather than in every controller inheriting this MVC controller ourselves, let's do it in the base controller and inherit from the base controller. So you get all these features for free. Yeah, makes sense. That's the inspiration we have got from UI5 framework. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back to our app, and in the controller folder, we are creating a base controller.js. So right click, create a file. And guys, I'm not adding controller.js to it. Just watch out. Interesting thing. When you're creating base controller, just make sure that you forget or you don't intentionally add controller.js. Okay, we are not adding that. Okay, we're just keeping it as a base controller.js. Don't add that extra controller.js. Extra controller.js is required only when you need this properly with the view. But here this base controller is acting like a template. It's going to behave like a template for whatever reusability we want. We can use this. Let's again come back. Anyone who will tell me what is the syntax to create a JavaScript file in UI5 project? What is the syntax to create JavaScript file in UI5 project? Perfect answer. It is scaffolding template. Very good, Santosh and Ajit. Both of you are perfect. Thank you so much for that answer. It's scaffolding template. sap.ui.define. That's our scaffolding template to create any JavaScript file as part of UI5 application. So parenthesis. And now we are going to write here inside this bracket comma function, and let's go ahead and put the modules here. So I will say base controller sap slash ui slash mvc slash core slash base controller, and let's return extend, and I will put here the complete path for the base controller. Let me put the path here. So what will be the path? Let me just go and show you. It's Ironman dot controller base controller. That's what we have to put. So Ironman dot controller folder. Inside that we have a base controller. That's our path, comma curly braces, and of course you can, since it's inheriting from the base controller, which is a super class. You can also add some methods if you wish to. 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 Wish to means it's your choice. Later point of time, I'm going to add some reusable functionality. Right now, I'm just building this model which is reusable. This is my intention to make a reusable module so that later on this can be helpful for us. If you need something to be shared between your child controllers, you can put it in the base controller and it always be available in the child automatically. So something you need tomorrow which should be shared between all the controllers of your application, put it in the base controller and then that comes automatically to the child because inheritance. So now there's another catch which we missed. We have to also now use this base controller to be inherited in the view one controller. So here in the view one controller, instead of inheriting from this controller class, we are now saying Ironman slash controller slash base controller. Is that clear, everyone? What did we do? What did we do? We have first inherited from the base controller, which is super class coming from SAP UI5, created our base controller, and then we are creating view one, which is inheriting from our own base controller, making it double multi-level inheritance. Am I clear, guys? So not always do it
Anubhav,
for something. We always do things follow standard. This is another standard which we are following. Yes, please go ahead.
so the dependency that you gave this time has the term base controller in that. So if you go to basecontroller.js,
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so
the
sorry. This is
dependency,
incorrect. It won't work. Let me run this. If I do something wrong, अनुभव के ऊपर कोई प्रिंट आउट नहीं है that अनुभव does everything which works. अनुभव also may go wrong, and you see I have unintentionally went wrong and it's not working because there is nothing called base controller in UI core. Okay, there is nothing called base controller in UI core, and this will be charged to me as a result of dump. You see, SAP UI5 is equal to everybody, not special to me, not special to you. If you do something wrong, it will go wrong. Your output won't come. If Anubhav also do something wrong, it will also go wrong. You see, I have done a dependency SAP UI core base controller, which is not there. So you remember the right class name was just controller. Save this up, coming back, refresh the page, and oops, again there's a problem. SAP UI MVC core controller. What was the class name? I forgot the class name. Sorry.
It's core slash MVC.
Yes, you're right. SAP core is the library name. In that we have MVC and controller class. Perfect. Let's come back, refresh the page, and voila, there you go. You can see it's working, give some power, and your testing works good. Is that clear, everyone? No difference for end user. Absolutely no difference. But it's for you as a developer to go more and more close to standard. Is that clear? Many things you do has no impact on UI. Zero impact on UI. Not at all any difference on UI side. But why we do those things? To follow standard. Everybody wants to follow, build their apps, making sure that nobody give them a bad comment about their work, right? This is the main reason why we are spending a lot of time here to learn. Not necessary everything has benefit, but many times we do things just to give more and more robust nature of our application. You might have also done in your career, many times you might have thought of improving your program, which will not bring a change for end user as a difference, but probably you do that for making sure of following standard. That's the reason why we added this. This has a great advantage. You will know these advantages during the climax of this movie. All right, let's move on. So this is just one change which I wanted to show, taking inspiration from UI5. So now we will talk about quickly XML views. Before we move to XML views, we as an ABAPer, as we all know, we have never came across these terminologies, HTML, CSS, JS and all that. So what is XML? First of all, let's try to understand XML kya hai. Okay, so what is XML? So let's first understand what is XML, which is very important for us. Begin with what is XML and then moving slowly to XML views. What is XML? What do you think is XML? Let's talk an example here. I have my ABAP program. Anybody from .NET world? Say yes. Anyone from .NET world have ever done .NET programming, VB programming, or anybody? Anyone? .NET world? No one? Which is the top used programming language other than ABAP you guys have used? Anyone? Which is the other programming language you've used? Java? Anyone from Java language? Anyone here from Java language? No one? No one from Java? All are ABAPers? Alright, good. That makes it easy for me. Cool. So there are some Pythons. Okay, alright. So let me take an example probably then, because Java is like a very, very very afraid word for ABAPers. It's difficult to understand. Okay, now coming back, let's understand. I want to talk between two programs. One is written in ABAP and one is written in .NET. How can these two programs communicate to each other? ABAP understand internal table and work area. Now, on the .NET side, we have something called collections in .NET. Okay. Now, do you think ABAP understand collections? Anyone? Do you think ABAP understand collections? Do you think ABAP understand collections? No. Do you think .NET understand internal table? Do you think .NET understand internal table? No. They don't understand each other. So both of these guys don't understand each other. What do? We need a common medium, a common language which both can understand, isn't it? We need a common channel, we need a common medium which both can understand. So XML stands for Extensible Markup Language, which was originally designed to help communicating between heterogeneous technologies. Heterogeneous means different technologies. This was the original use of XML. XML is the way by which they both can communicate. So what happens? You will add something called special powers to your modules. So be it ABAP or be it your .NET, you will add a special power to your language. Every language has processing capability, has XML processing capabilities. This is what every XML has. Every XML has, every programming language has XML processing capabilities. So what do you do? So whenever you are sending some data, which is there in an internal table, whenever you're sending some data to .NET, which is your internal table, what do you do? What do you do before sending the data which is there in your internal table to .NET? What do? You convert this, very good answer, to an XML and then send this XML over the network whatsoever to .NET. What .NET has to do now? It has to convert this XML data back to its collections. Okay, it has to convert to its collections. And now .NET has done some changes to the data, and it has to send back to about what .NET has to do. The data is there in .NET collections, which are variables in .NET, convert to XML again. Yeah, so it converts to XML, and now this XML is transported or moved to the ABAP language. What ABAP has to do? What ABAP has to do to bring this data to internal table, again convert back this XML to an internal table. Is this clear, guys? How XML is helpful for communicating between two heterogeneous technologies? They both don't understand anything. So this is why SAP, it's possible to communicate with any system, because SAP ABAP is also such a powerful language which allows you to convert this. So what is this process called? When we convert an data object, which is, for example, your internal table, structure, work area, action, .NET, whatever, when you convert a data object to XML, this process is known as This process is known as this process is known as parsing. Sorry, it's called rendering. Okay. When you convert a data object to an XML, this process is known as rendering. Okay, you are rendering, you're creating an XML. This is a technical term used in industry heavily. Don't confuse, it's just a term used. It means converting data object to XML. It's called rendering. The reverse process is when we convert an XML to data object. This process is known as parsing. Clear, everyone? This is known as parsing. Am I clear, everyone? The difference between rendering and parsing. In SAP, there is a module called XI. If you ever worked on SAP XI, Exchange Infrastructure module, it heavily does a lot of parsing and rendering. Okay, in XML especially, when it comes to ABAP language, we have XML processing interfaces. What is that interface name? if underscore IXML and if underscore XML underscore document. These are all some interfaces which are used to convert XML to internal table or vice versa. These are all the objects we use in ABAP to do this. If you want to learn that, of course, in this context, in our current course, it's not relevant. Just an additional information I gave you. Those who want to work with XML processing in ABAP, you should learn this. You should learn these interfaces, IFI XML, IF underscore XML document. These are all the important things we should learn if you wish to learn XML processing. If you wish to learn. So this is covered also in my ABAP course. If you will go with my Oops ABAP course, if somebody is interested, then you can go with my Oops ABAP course. In that course, I have covered it. All right. So XML rendering and parsing. So is that clear? What is XML? Am I clear, guys? What is XML? The basics of XML. Is it clear? Now, what are all the important things we should keep in mind? Funda Fox for XML. XML is not a programming language. It's a markup. Okay. It's a markup like HTML. It also follows three data structures. Elements, the nodes and elements of XML are not predefined, which means you can create your own nodes, own parent-child relationships. It is up to you to create it. Like HTML, the tag names were given by W3C. You can't use anything of your choice, but XML, it's a tree data structure which you can build. Let me show you writing an XML example. Just a simple example we'll write. So I'll say data, and I'll just put here maybe I'll just put here employee name, employee details. This is a simple XML, guys. Okay. It's a very simple XML, and this has probably employee number. These are all my own nodes. Let's say 100,000, whatever. MP number. This is how we are writing a simple XML. Every tag must have an ending tag, as you can see already. Every tag is having an ending tag. So here, this is your XML. So in this, you can see something which has children's. These things you see, there are children's here. So the parent of that is called a node. So here, employee details is a node. Clear, everyone? What is a node? A node which has a children's. That's what a node is. An element which doesn't have children, it has values. Okay. Now you see data is the super node of everybody, so that's why it's called root node. Is this clear, everyone? Why? What is data? Data is called root node because the super parent of everybody. All the other elements are children's of this root node. Is this clear, everyone? What is the root node? Now additionally, you can also give properties which are called namespaces. So you can give properties and property value inside the stereo symbol. This bracket is called stereo symbol. So inside stereo symbol, you can give also the properties inside an XML. Is this clear, everyone? What is basics of an XML? What is it was originally used for, and how to create an XML? What type of data structure it follows? What is an example of an XML? That makes your foundation ready to go to the next level. So now we will talk about XML views. Okay. First, we'll see how to create an XML view. And then we'll talk about some funda foxes, the benefits of XML view. And then we'll also discuss why not JavaScript view, why XML views are popular in industry. Let's go back and discuss how to create our first XML view. Okay. How to create our XML view. To create that, we need to use control library as namespace. Okay, you must use control libraries as namespace, guys. Okay, what is namespace? It's an aliasing of every control library. Remember, in JavaScript view, when we are creating a button, we were putting library name dot control name, correct? Do you remember that? In JavaScript view, when we were writing the control, we were putting library name dot control name. See, library name is SAPM, control name is button. Is this clear, everyone? Do you remember this? Whenever we put a control, we put library name dot control name. This is what we do. So now in XML view, the library name is represented by namespace. Okay. We need to use control library as namespace in XML view. This is very important. So let's write a syntax as below. So we have to use view class, and then we have to say view, and I will say XML namespace, XML NS. Here everyone, this is called namespace. This is how you define namespace, equals to sap.m. What does it mean? What does this mean? This means I am creating XML namespace as SAPM. This is a default namespace. This is a default namespace. Why? Because after XML namespace, I didn't give any value. This is default namespace, which means if I put a button inside this view, if I put a button, what do you think, which library system will look for the button control? Which library? Because since XML namespace is SAPM, by default, this button will be looked by SAP UI5 in SAPM library. Is this clear, everyone? Where will system go and check? Which library system go and check the button control? It's sap.m because that's your default namespace. Am I clear? Yes or no at this point? Is this yes or no? 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 Yes, I have got almost every yes. Let me make it more interesting. Then you understood about default namespace. What about named namespace? You see here this view class is part of MVC library. It's not part of M library. What will happen if I put now, if I put this XML view and run, what will happen? It will dump. Why? Because system will try to look this view class inside SAPM, right? System will try to look for this view class in SAPM library. It won't find and it will dump. That's the reason we put another namespace, XML namespace, and I will name something, let's say Joker. I will say Mario. Whatever name it's your choice, you say Mario. Okay, just keep it in small letter. That's a good practice. And now here you put SAP UI Core MVC. Is that clear, everyone? And now whenever you're using view, you have to use Mario. So just come and use Mario here, Mario view and Mario view. Am I clear, everybody? What is happening here? Are you guys clear with the concept of namespace inside of a view? Is this clear? So now you see I have defined another namespace. Watch out, this is a variable, like a variable. I said, hey, whenever somebody using Mario, it means SAP UI Core MVC library, which means for view class, which library the view is looked upon? Which library system will look the view upon now? Which library system will look for view class? It's the Mario. What is Mario representing? Mario is representing SAP UI Core MVC class. In this class system will look for view object. Am I clear now? Yes or no? Because view class is not part of M library. It's part of UI Core MVC library. That's the reason we have to give this namespace. Okay. I hope it's clear, guys. Am I clear? Once again, I repeat, I will go back to basics, forget about everything. This part we were clear with this part. SAP M library, this was the default namespace. Now what I'll do is I'll try to run this. But the view object, if you see this view class, it's not part of SAP M library. Let me go back to UI5 SDK and show you. Go to SAP UI5 SDK. And if you just check the UI5 SDK, you would observe, you would find that view class is not part of SAP M library. Okay. What will happen if this view class is not SAP M library? What do you think now system will look? Which library? If I run this code, which library system will look this view class into? It will look in SAPM because SAPM is the default namespace, right? It's the default namespace. So what do I do to tell system that, hey, look for view class inside core library? Don't look in SAPM. Look for the view class in core library. So if you go to API reference for view class, you would observe that the view is not part of SAP M library. It's part of SAP UI Core MVC library. Can you see this view class here? Can you see this view class here? It's part of which library? 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 SAP UI Core MVC library. The parent control is the control class. You forgot yesterday's concept, Vaishali. Every class has a super class as control class, not part of control class. So it's part of view this library. Now when I run this code, it won't work because system will look which library system will look this view. Which library system will look for this view? Which library system will look for this view? Which library? In this case, SAP M it is looking and it will fail, right? Which library actually the view is part of? Which library the view is part of? MVC library. So let's come and pick a variable XML namespace and I can say Anubhav equals to SAP UI Core MVC. Is this clear? I have created a variable here saying Anubhav means SAP UI MVC library. And now before the view, just put this variable Anubhav colon and Anubhav colon. It means now we are saying, hey, this view you should refer to Anubhav. What Anubhav indicates? Anubhav indicates SAP UI Core MVC. Am I clear, guys? This whole flow, is this clear to everybody? What is happening? Is this clear to everyone what's going on? How to define namespace to indicate the library name? Is this clear everybody? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Perfect. Cool. So now let's also add another variable called controller name. And here you have to give the address of your controller inside because that's the controller the view should return to UI5. Remember in the JavaScript view, we had a dedicated method called getControllerName, with which the view was returning the name of the controller to the UI5 framework. Here it's exactly the same thing because XML is not a programming language. We can't have a method here. Rather, we are declaring the controller name, which is the controller for the view. This is the syntax to create a JavaScript view. Is this clear? XML view. Is this clear? So we can proceed now and create our first XML view on the system. Am I clear? Yeah, let's do that. So now I will go back and create one. So right now I will not use the wizard to create that. Rather, I will use directly my XML wizard. Before we move, let me ask one question. Can multiple views share one controller? Anybody? Can multiple views share one controller? Yes, it is possible. Interview question, guys. It's an interview question. Can multiple views share one controller? Yes, it is possible. Can multiple controllers be added to one view? Is this possible? The vice versa, basically, it's a vice versa of previous one. No, that's not possible. This is not possible. You can see always that you are always allowed to return one controller name. You can't return multiple controller names. You can't return multiple controller names. This is a function. Function always return one value. You can't return multiple controller names. Okay. This is the reason you only allowed to have one controller. Okay, one controller. View cannot point to multiple controller. If you have multiple views, they can't point to multiple controller, but one controller can be pointed by multiple views. So in pictorial way, if I want to write controller, so the possibility here is multiple views are sharing this controller. So you have a view 1 and you have a view 2. Both the views can reuse this controller. Okay, both the views can reuse this controller, but it has to be like this. It is not possible that you have controller 2 which is referred by one view to two controllers. This is not allowed. You see on the right side to left side it's not allowed. Left to right is allowed, but right to left is not allowed. You see one view cannot point. This is not possible. One view cannot point to two controllers. This is impossible. This is impossible. Multiple views can share one controller, but one view can't share multiple controller. Is this clear, everybody? Two interview questions, most important interview questions in SAP UI5, also maybe certification questions, how the controller view relationship goes. What is the best practice? Now you will ask Anubhav, what is the best practice? The best practice is one-to-one. Okay. If you see a real-time theory application, it's one-to-one. The best practice is one-to-one. What does it mean? Anyone, can you brief me about what does one-to-one mean in this case? Anyone? What do you mean one-to-one? What do you mean one-to-one? One means every view has its own controller. Is this clear? That's a best practice. Okay, that's a best practice. That's a best practice. Best practice means ऐसा होना चाहिए. अब अगर आप करो या ना करो वो आपका मर्जी है. You can violate the best practice and do it your own way. I am not stopping you. Nobody is stopping you. But when you go with code review, you will get nice comments and then you have to make the changes because you want to stick to standard. Am I clear? These are also best practices for code review. Many times people come to me, Anubhav, what is code review checklist? The code review checklist, this is what will make your code review checklist. You have to make sure that somebody don't violate these rules. Okay? Somebody don't violate these rules. Very important. Let's move on. Best practice is having one-to-one relationship. Let's go ahead and now violate the best practice for time being. I'll create an XML view now. Right click here and say new file. I'm going to create a new view. I say view2.xml.view. View.xml. Is this clear how am I creating a view, guys? I'm creating an XML view. Am I clear, guys? I'm creating an XML view. And as I said, I will use Anubhav, comma, view class. And I'll say XML namespace. Anubhav means anyone, which library view class represents, which library view is part of SAP UI core MVC class. This is the class in which view class is present. This is the library. Now maybe I just add another one, XML namespace, which is a, what is this namespace called? Without a name after it, what is this called? This is, what is this called? A namespace without any name, like on the above we have put, this is the default namespace. Perfect answer. So that's your view, and inside that I'm just going to add a button with a text property, and I say this is my XML btn XML button. Okay, I say XML button, and I will say press, and I will reuse the controller, guys. Controller is view one controller. I'm going to reuse, and I'll use on joker. I will put on joker there. And guys, it won't work because you see now here we have something called core and we have something called ID, Anubhav and all that. Of course, it won't work, but let me just show you. Anyway, just put an input field with an ID is Anubhav, ID Anubhav, and I'm just gonna close this up and I'll say on Joker. I'm just reusing that event handler, guys. Okay. Basically, I want to show you it calls that event handler or not. Of course, you have to attach it to the controller. How do you know in XML view which controller it is talking to? Which is the controller of this guy? Who is the controller of this guy? Who is the brother of this sister? How do you know which is the controller of this class? How do you know which is the controller of this view? You didn't even put it. You didn't even put it. You didn't even put it. You have to put it now. Controller name, address, Iron Man dot controller dot view one is the controller name. Don't mess up here, guys. Don't over engineer. The biggest problem, you guys think too much. The things which are simple, you don't try to keep it simple. You try to think over. This is how our mind is programmed. Our mind is programmed after working in industry so many years that we start thinking over. We try to apply over engineering on everything. Things which are simple, you should just keep it, let them simple. Here the view one, many people are thinking it's this view one. No, this is controller. Look at here, controller likh raha hu main saab saab yahan pe. You see the address. See the address. Iron Man is your web directory. This controller is your controller folder. Inside that view one बोल के क्या है वहां पे? Controller ही तो है. ज्यादा लोड क्यों ले रहे हो? Why are you taking too much excessive load to understand this simple thing? Is this complicated? Is this complicated to understand that we have given address of the controller here? Not at all. Not at all. It's just the address. Just go with the flow. Simply trace the address. No matter, don't care about this name. Simply trace the address. What is the address? Ironman.controller. In that Ironman.controller, what is it? It's the view1 controller. See, view1 is inheriting from base controller already. You don't have to give base controller here. Base controller is just like acting a template. So view1 is inheriting from the base controller here. Okay. Now we are using view one. So this satisfy to the question number one. We can use one controller, multiple views. Okay. That satisfies it. Save this. But now it's time to display that view. So go to index.html where we are creating the view object. And I will right now comment out our JavaScript view. Okay. And I will put here O view one for my XML view. Same syntax, only the type of the view changes. New SAP UI view. And I'll say ID of the view. Just put it as ID XML view. And I'll say view name. Let's put its address. Who will tell me what is the address of my XML view? Let's see how much time you have spent on practicing this particular piece of code. Who will tell me what's the address of my XML view? What is the address of my XML view? कौन बताएगा मुझे? Ironman.view.view2. Perfect. Shriveni has got the right answer. The first is view.view2. Perfect, Shriveni. Thank you so much for that answer. You can see it's Ironman web app folder.view.view2 folder. That's what was our learning in namespace chapter. Coming down, the type of the view. Rather than putting hard-coded type, I can put a constant SAP UI core MVC dot view type dot xml. This is a ready-made built-in constant in SAP UI5 to represent view types. Okay, to represent view types is a built-in constant in SAP UI core MVC library. There is a structure called view type. Inside that there is a constant called XML. That's what it has. I just put it, and now this is going to go to the DOM body of HTML, and we will now see by running this what do we get. So let's go back and refresh here, and let's see what happens. Boom, there you go. Your XML view, guys. Your first XML view is live on your screen. Congratulations, guys. Congratulations. Your first XML view is live on the screen. Your first XML view, guys. And I will enter some value here. My XML world. And now press F12. And I click on the button, you'll see an error will come. I'll tell you the reason why it will come. XML button. And you see it's giving an error. Get value of undefined. What's going on? What's going on? मैंने तो ID सही रखा था. Let me show you again. Back to the view. What is the ID of my input field? What is the ID of my input field? What is the ID of my input field? What is the ID? ID Anubhav. You remember this was the same ID for JavaScript view. And in the controller, we are now saying, hey, SAP UI core, please give me the ID, control with ID Anubhav. Am I doing something wrong here? Anyone? Am I doing something wrong here? I'm trying to get the control object with its ID. Am I doing something wrong? No, this is not, you are not wrong. What's going on behind the scene? Let me explain you what's going on. When we use JavaScript views, The control ID is kept in DOM as it is. But when we use XML View, SAP UI5 framework creates the control ID by appending the view ID before control ID. इसको भूल नहीं जाना. This is the most important funda fox of entire course. I will explain you, don't worry. I've just written it. Let me explain. Give me some time to explain, then only I can explain. You allow me to proceed, then only I can proceed, guys. I cannot proceed if you stop me just right after writing the statement. Okay, so watch out. In JavaScript view, the control ID is kept as it is in the DOM. Now let me do one thing. I will enable both the views together on the screen. Let me enable both the views. This is my JavaScript view and this is my XML view. I am putting both the views in the DOM. So now this one I place at, and I'll say, let's say XML V. I'll create an XML V element in the DOM. Is this clear, everyone? I am putting both the views together now. Is this clear, everyone? We are putting both the views now together. As a result, you will see both the views will come on the UI. Enter. Now, can you see both the views? The upper area is your JavaScript view and the below area is your XML view. Yeah. Is this clear, everyone? Let's investigate the ID of the controls. So first I'll investigate, right click, inspect the element ID for this JavaScript view element. What is the ID of the control? Anyone? What is the ID of the control system has put? What is the ID of the control system has put for JavaScript view? It is ID Anubhav. Let's investigate below input fields. I inspect below input fields. What do you think the ID of input field which is kept by XML view? What do you think is the ID which is kept by XML view? It has appended. It has appended the view ID before the control ID. Are you clear? Are you clear now? What does it mean? Appended the view ID automatically before the control ID. Is this clear? Yes or no? Please answer yes or no. Later on you will say, Anubhav, again, that will be difficult for me to jump back. Is this clear? Not clear? Again, and let me repeat. I go back, investigate the JavaScript view element. I see the ID of the input element is ID Anubhav. It's directly whatever ID I had put in the view, that ID is visible. So I had gone and I'm in the view one. In the view one, I had put an ID of the input field as ID Anubhav. Can you see? It was ID Anubhav. What system produced in the DOM? As it is. As it is. Whatever ID you put, it is produced it. In case of XML view, what happened? XML view, in case of XML view, what happened? What is the ID of the control? What becomes the ID of the control? What becomes the ID of the control? What becomes the ID of the control in case of XML views? It is the view ID hyphen control ID. Okay. System appends the view ID before the control ID. Is this clear, everyone? This is a very important topic. Very important topic in upcoming days in your company. Sometimes your company may ask you to convert a JavaScript app to an XML view based app. Okay, it happens actually. Sometimes there is already an app which is old app running in JavaScript views. Your company will give you work to convert that JS view to XML view. That time this will create a big catch for you because ID of an element gets view ID before it. Let me write down here. So UI5 framework creates the control ID by appending the view ID before, hence becomes view ID hyphen control ID. Is this clear? But that is impacting your get core API. If you now try to do SAP UI get core, by ID, Anubhav, get value. Whatever value you have in JavaScript, that will come. Because JavaScript is having this ID. Now to want to refer to this gentleman, what do you have to do? Want to refer to XML view wala input field, what do you have to do? You have to also do the same. Just put the ID of the view. What is ID of the view? Come back to the HTML. See the ID of the view. I have given ID XML view, right? This is XML view ID. I use this ID XML view and hyphen hyphen control ID, press enter. Now you get your value. Is this clear, everybody? Is this clear to everybody, the difference between JavaScript and XML view, how the ID is being built for control by the SAP UI5 in the DOM? That's the reason in our controller right now there is a code. You can see this code, ocore.getElement by ID is not working. Is this clear, guys? Why for XML view it's not working, for JS view it's working? So what do you have to do? In case of XML views, you have to use a different API, which was now coming back to the chapter which I left unattended that day. You remember there are two ways to access control IDs, control objects. Do you remember this slide number 45, which we discussed 2 days before? I told you in XML view, you will be using this API rather than get core API. So you have to use this API. So I'll come back rather than using this gentleman and this gentleman. I'll say var o input equals to please get my controller object this dot get view. Guys, another beauty of XML view, you just have to use this. You don't have to pass the controller instance separately like we did yesterday, right? We passed a controller instance explicitly. We don't have to do that. So this dot get view dot by ID. And now in this, you have already obtained the view object. System knows that this is your view. Inside the view, now you look forward for Anubhav ID. Directly check that. You don't have to put now view ID hyphen hyphen controller ID, because why? You don't have to put view ID before this. Why? Because you're already in the view. Can you see? You're already in the view. Earlier you were in the core, but now you're already in the view, not in the core. For core, the view, the complete ID is required, but for the view, complete ID is not required. This much is enough. Is this line clear to everybody? Line by line, no copy paste of code. Never ever do copy paste of code. You are cheating yourself if you are doing copy paste. And trainers who are teaching you copy paste, they are also cheating you. Okay, you can see here, this is the line of code which is going to give you the result back. Let's save this up and come back and test our XML view. You're going to see the desired result on your user interface. Let me just refresh that, and I just come and say voila, and I click on XML button. Voila, there you go. You can see for XML view, the coda is working now. Is this clear, guys? The clear differentiation, how to use get core. If you want to use get core, you can use it, but you have to make your ID, which is complicated always. Never do that. Always use this.getView.byId in case of XML views. Another advantage of XML views is you don't have to explicitly pass controller object. Okay, this is the best practice you will see everywhere in entire SAP UI5 applications. This is the best practice which is used. Let's come back and now write down these best practices, very important points. So we already written them actually. So why XML views over JavaScript view? Now let me answer. This is the top asked question by you. Many forums, many chapters. Why we use XML views as compared to JavaScript views in UI5? The first biggest reason. My question to all of you, is XML a programming language? Is XML a programming language? No, XML is markup. Now guys, what MVC principle says? Should your view have any processing logic? Should your view have any processing logic? Never ever, right? But if you use JavaScript view, what is the possibility? If you use JavaScript view, what is the possibility? If you use JavaScript view, what is the possibility? Somebody can write the code. If you go to view, here you remember I have first day I've written here a function, which is actually a processing logic, right? I can end up writing processing logic inside view. I can end up writing processing logic inside a view if you use JavaScript view. This is a violation of, this is a violation of, this is a violation of MVC principle. It's a violation of MVC principle. That's why industry is saying use best practice. This is an MVC best practice. So if someone use, there is a possibility that we end up writing some processing logic inside of a JS view, which is a violation of MVC principles. This is the reason why we don't use JavaScript views much. Still, I say 5% apps, they are doing it. That maybe so smart enough to take care of such things. We don't care about it. Okay. Second reason, industry standard. What do you think, guys? Why SAP given this UI5 framework? Why SAP come to this UI5 framework? Why? Why SAP has to introduce UI5 framework? Because of industry moving towards mobile. Every company now want to consume their business application on mobile. Like leave request approval. Have you seen leave request approval app in the SAP? Industry is moving more towards mobile. So mobile ke liye, which are all the technologies for mobile devices? Anyone? Which are all the technologies for mobile devices? Android, iOS, right? So they are the pioneers of mobile world, right? They are the pioneers. So when you ever work with Android, get a chance to work with Android, you will see in Android we have something called view also, MVC. It's again MVC, and views are always created via XML. So industries standard, which is Android and iOS, they say create the views in XML format. In Android, we call it as activity.xml. This is a very famous name. Once upon a time, I'm sure many of you would have tried your hands in Android. वो कभी कभी उठता है ना मन में यार मैं भी I will also make a game, I will also make a WhatsApp, I will create a $1 billion startup. Yeah, 2 दिन ही होता है वो, 2-3 दिन का एनर्जी रहता है. That time you install Android SDK, you install Cordova, you Android lot of things. So you get that 2 days of spark to build, have a dream to build a mobile app which will become world famous and will give you billions of dollars like WhatsApp. This is everybody's dream and we all dream about it, and we start installing and start crawling internet to how to learn Android, what are all the steps to learn Android, how to install development environment for Android, Android SDK. We all do that. Come on, don't lie to me. I know you all have tried it, or at least you would have Googled it, what to do to learn Android. You might have seen some tutorials to learn Android. To have this dream of selling $1 billion application, build $1 billion game or $1 billion application and sell it out in the market. And after 2-3 days, again, when your manager gives you nice hearings, at that time you're back to work. You lose that hope. So that is the time even it happened with me once. I tried to learn Android. In fact, I was hardly successful. And there's a concept called activity.xml. But I learned something good, that it also, the UI5 is similarly designed as Android is. Okay. So there we also have a concept of views, which is built in XML format. Okay. Views are built in XML format. No learning goes waste. So वहां से भी मैंने निकाल लिया activity.xml. So that's a concept of view in Android. So this is industry standard. The third reason, parsing of XML is faster. as compared to JavaScript. Okay, as compared to JavaScript. Parsing of XML is faster as compared to JavaScript. JavaScript view converting to the DOM takes time by UI5. However, XML view parsing is much faster. That's the beauty. That's the biggest advantage of using. It's faster rendering, faster parsing. It converts the equivalent DOM faster as compared to JavaScript. So this is another reason why we prefer to use XML view. All the standard SAP UI5 app are delivered in XML view. So this is why it has become more like important for us to learn XML. Because if you ever want to change a standard UI5, you have to learn XML. So why to learn two things? Learn XML to code our view also and change SAP's views also, right? So this is another reason why XML views are more and more popular across any other type of views. Is this clear, guys? That does answer your question. What are all the benefits? This is an interview question again. Why XML views are popular as compared to any other type of views, or maybe just as compared to JavaScript view? Am I clear, guys? Is this clear, everyone? And guys, the last not the least, SAP Web IDE offers templates to generate your app automatically. And when we generate, guess what? Which type of views are generated by UI5 Web IDE templates? Web IDE templates generate which type of view? Have you worked with templates? If not, don't worry. I will explain you them in later point of time. You might have at least tried UI5 first time creating an app by looking at some tutorial using Web IDE. So that time you might have seen it creates all XML view. So when we generate, so you can use the templates to generate app automatically. When it generates, all the views are in XML format. That's what it does. Is that clear, everybody? Are you all clear with all this stuff what we discussed today? So creating your first XML view exercise for today. Design an XML view with employee information, and on click of save button, display that information in label elements below. You have to design couple of input fields, let's say employee name, employee address, employee salary, and then you will have a button, let's say save button. On click of this button, this data should be immediately displayed in labels. So you will put label controls, and on these label controls, the data will be displayed. So suppose you enter 1000 demo, salary as 90,000. So on save button, this data should display in these label controls on the UI. That's an exercise using XML views and a controller of XML view, dedicated controller for XML view. That's what is an exercise for today. With that, it's a wrap on today's class. Any questions before we close?
Anubhav, we used get view, right? This dot get view
Yes.
by ID. Here, how does system know which view it should look come to?
All right. So in this case of this is the reason why we have one view per controller. So because since you have one-to-one relationship, system already knows that which view you are referring to. Okay. System already knows. In case of this example, get view will by default point to XML view. Okay. It gives precedence to XML view. However, if you wish to get another view, you can pass the view ID here. You can pass here the view ID, JS view, whatever is the ID of JS view, pass that and it will refer to that view then in that case. Okay. In this method, you can pass.
All right. And also the view, when we create a view, we use the SAP UI.
Yeah, that's all, yeah.
Do we get this?
Can you please mute your line? It's disturbing us. Go ahead with your question. अरे क्या हो रहा है? Who is this? Sorry, please ask your question again. Rohit, go ahead.
The documentation of the core classes like SAP UI view and define. Where do we get the documentation?
Can you please repeat again? I didn't get your question.
See, we have this view. We have this class sap.ui.view, right?
Right.
I need to get the documentation of this class.
Here it is. SAP UI5 SDK. You can see Vaishali already answering. Everybody answered your question already in the chat window. I don't have to tell you the answer.
But the class is different here, right? This is core.mvc.view.
This is what we have used. This is what we have used.
Can you go to our Can you go to the index.html?
No. One second. It's this one. You see Anubhav, view, and we are referring to this. Here it's just the instantiation of that view object. Ultimately, what object are you going to get? Here, this is just instantiation of. This is how we instantiate a view object. It's not the class actually. Don't mix up this one. This is a kind of constructor to instantiate. This is an API to instantiate that view. But ultimately, the object which you get is this SAP UI Core MVC view object. This is the object you get. In this, whatever methods you have, those methods will be usable for you. You can also go and check the parent class. You see it's control class. So all the methods you will get from here. You see view name. Remember the view name? That's the property we are passing here. View name. See here, view name.
Yeah. So I just confused with this sap.view.
That's okay. That's okay. It's fine. It's natural to get confused here, thinking that this is a class and just try to finding it a documentation. That won't help because that's an API to create the object of the view.
All right. Just one last question, Anubhav.
Yes.
In our projects, where do we get the namespace? Like a part of the index.html, where when we create the application, we give the namespace, right?
Right.
How do we see that?
Here it is in index.
No, this is okay. This is the index.html, not this one. When we create right click and then give a namespace, right? The Iron Man, we give the same.
You can't get a help for that. So you have to always refer index.html, come here, check the name properly, and then you use it. There is no automatic help here while creating it. So guys, for your information, you can also create
if there is an issue.
It's not an issue. It's natural.
Yeah, this name.
This won't come automatically. This is not an issue. It is like this only since beginning. You have to put it because it's your custom thing, right? Whatever is view name and the namespace, it's your own defined things. So SAP can't suggest that to you. You have to put your own things here. You need to
after we create, is there any place where we can see those details? Because for an existing project, if I want to check.
Yes, this is an existing one and you can see the details here.
Okay, only the address.
Yes, that's a controller address. You can see even in the inside the controller, you can see. Go to the controller and you can see here. This is the address.
No, in the sense like in this case, we use all Iron Man. Let's say in the right click project, when we give Spider-Man, the project will not work. So
it will not work. Yes, then you have to either go and change your namespace or you have to come and change Spider-Man to Iron Man.
So in the console, we'll be able to get those details.
Yes, you will be. Try it out and come back to me.
I'll try to. Yeah, I'll do that. Thanks, Anubhav. Thank you.
Hi, Anubhav. I was asking
Churchill do not expect what country gave you. Tell me what you gave to country. Okay, that is important. Don't expect country to do something for you. Tell me what you have done for country. Same thing applies here. Do not expect Anubhav to tell you everything. Tell me what have you practiced out. That's more important. Why am I telling it? Because I want you to get into the habit of doing practice, getting your hands dirty into the code. That is my intention. It's not like I can't tell you the results, I can't tell you the answers. But understand, guys, it's infinite combinations. Infinite combinations. So you have to practice these things. This is why more you do is what more you get. More you do, more you get. This is what you have to try it out. I completely agree. When you're stuck somewhere, when you have no choice, you can come to me. I am there for you. But utilize my time properly. Go ahead, next question, please.
Hey, hi Anubhav.
Yes.
I want to ask you one question like previous class regarding the button class and properties praise property. So you are passing like array to the property, right? Array to the praise property, but I'm not able to see any SAP SDK. If you go to SAP SDK, we're not able to see that it is returning array to the praise property.
It will be. I'll just show you. So if you go back, let's say I'll take an example of a table. Okay. And if you go here, you would observe that application cardinality 0 to n. What does the n indicates here? What do you think, guys? N indicates here multiple. How do you
It's array,
represent
yes.
multiple in JavaScript? Array.
Yes.
समझे दोस्त?
I'm talking about the button.
Button.
Press.
Okay,
Yes.
that's something which we are returning out of the view. So you are talking actually about here when we are saying
Yes.
create content method of the view class, right? It's returning
Yes.
multiple, right? So here it's returning
Correct.
multiple. Let's go to the view.
No. Press button. SAP.aim that button.
Okay,
And
this
in
one
press
you won't
property,
see. This is a trick. This you won't see. Yes, you're right. This one you directly don't see for a button. If you go to the button,
yes.
you just come here and for the press event, and you go to the events, press event. Let's click on the event. You will not see directly it over here. You don't see that. Yes, that's something you don't see because it is not giving what to pass to the button actually. It won't get you directly what to pass to the button actually. But if you
Okay.
see the event signature, it's a little difficult, but you can see here it is showing source and parameters. Can you see? Which is the source for the event handler and what is the parameter? So actually we are passing this controller as a parameter separated from comma. This is a syntax you will not see, even I have never seen it. I have learned it all from on job when I was working on UI5 since first day, ever since SAP UI5 was available for general release. I've worked with it. So these things you may not find it easily in any book or any blog or something. This comes only with experience. So like this, there are many catches inside UI5 which you will learn in this course. That I agree with you. You don't see directly somewhere in documentation this thing. I agree with you this part. That's why this training is helping you. It will
Yeah,
help
actually
you
I
to see
debugged.
something which is not visible. Yes, please.
Yeah, actually I debugged yesterday for this you're passing this, right? If you don't pass this O controller here, so in the this I mean in the controller class in
Right.
the this parameter you in the debug mode you're not able to see the controller class. It
Absolutely.
is giving something else. Yeah,
Yes.
it is
So
giving
this is
something
what I
else.
expect from each one of you. Did you try debug? मैंने पढ़ा दिया आपने मान लिया. Have you tried debugging it? So you tried debugging it and you found out you learned something extra than others. Cool. Great then. Thank you so much for today's class. See you tomorrow. Have a nice day. Goodbye.